This is Amanda Anton's AP Exam Review for Module 2 in AP Psychology. There are three types of neurons: sensory neurons, motor neurons, and interneurons. Sensory, otherwise known as afferent neurons, send messages from our sensory receptors to our brain or spinal cord. For instance, if you lick a 9-volt battery, your sensory neurons are going to tell your brain that the shock is painful. Motor, also known as efferent neurons, send messages from our spinal cord or brain to our muscles and glands to help us move away from the pain. I wouldn't want to keep my tongue in that battery for long. That would hurt. Interneurons are what help the sensory and motor neurons communicate. Sensory and motor neurons are like spouses going through a divorce, as they need a therapist to help them talk to each other, the interneuron being the therapist. There are many parts to a neuron: dendrites, the soma, axon, myelin sheath, terminal buttons, and the nodes of Ranvier. Within the dendrites, there is also the vesicle sending messages through the synapses. Using resting and action potential, the neurotransmitters move through the body. Some neurotransmitters, such as adrenaline, will be sent through our body after some sort of stimulus to generate a response, such as that flight or flight feeling. There is also the refractory period, in which a break in between action potentials is performed, so it may recharge its quote-unquote attack. Many different neurotransmitters were mentioned in 2.2, such as endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, and epinephrine. Such neurotransmitters, although not all of them give straight happiness, some may increase feelings of emotion, mood, or energy. There's also the agonists and antagonists. Agonists bake the actions of certain neurotransmitters, while antagonists block neurotransmitters. There are two types of nervous systems, the peripheral and central. The central nervous system houses the brain and spinal cord, while the peripheral has a ton of other crazy things it splits off into. Within the peripheral nervous system, there is the autonomic and somatic systems, the autonomic using sympathetic, arousing, and parasympathetic, calming systems. On the other hand, the somatic system controls sensory input and motor output. The endocrine system influences what and how we think, as well as our behaviors, emotions, and communication. Overweight or underweight? Go complain to your thyroid. Maybe it'll change its mind, because that's what controls your metabolism. The pituitary gland not only adjusts your height, but also helps send messages to all of the other glands in your body. It is well known as the master gland of the body. You've surely heard of the mom superpower, right? Thanks to the power of the adrenal gland, every human being has that same hidden power. Our adrenal gland will produce epinephrine, a neurotransmitter, when our body goes into a state of excitement or alarm, known as a fight or flight feeling, telling our body to give us adrenaline. The gonads, also known as the sex glands, are in the pelvic area of a human, producing both estrogen and androgen. Men and women's bodies are quite similar, apart from the fact that our gonads are different, and men produce more androgen than females, and women produce more estrogen than males. Scientists have many ways for examining the brain. This list includes lesions, EEGs, CAT scans, MRIs, and more. There are also many parts to the brainstem, including the thalamus, reticular formation, the pons, and the medulla. Reticular formation occurs in the reticular activating system. It is used to manage out sleep cycles, awakeness, and more. The pons, sounding quite fancy, participates in a lot of fancy activities such as posture, dreaming, movement, and more. The medulla helps maintain our heartbeat as well as our breathing, so we don't just fall over and die out of nowhere. The thalamus, although part of the brainstem, is also part of the limbic system. It helps deliver sensory information to the cortex, letting us feel things while we are awake. On the other hand, while we are sleeping, the thalamus goes inactive, stopping the flow of sensory information. The hypothalamus regulates the brain, helping out with all of the usual essential functions of our body: hunger and thirst, glucose levels, aggression and pleasure, and more. The amygdala is what triggers our most basic emotions: aggression, jealousy, fear, and more. The hippocampus is responsible for memories, like learning and storing them. As stated in the lesson, you would most likely remember a hippo on campus. The basal ganglia, although sounds like some sort of weird spice, is essential to our brain, as it helps us plan each and every movement our body makes. The cerebral cortex plays a big part in everything we do, such as planning, speaking, speaking, and more. The cerebral cortex is both the motor and sensory cortex combined. Being the outer layer of the cerebrum, this gray matter is divided into four hemispheres. The hemispheres are connected through the corpus callosum, helping the axons communicate in the brain, and the fissures divide the hemispheres into four parts or lobes: the frontal, occipital, temporal, and parietal lobe. All four of the lobes have distinct jobs. The frontal lobe is what develops our emotions, personality, problem solving, and more. In the left frontal lobe, there lies the Broca's area. As if it is damaged, Broca's aphasia, or difficulty speaking and writing words, would occur. The parietal lobe's job is to use a sense of touch, working with nerves to help us feel things. This is where your sensory neurons go if you lick that 9-volt battery. The occipital lobe works with vision and how we see and perceive the world around us. Within the lobe, the visual cortex lies. It is the biggest part of the occipital lobe and is responsible for receiving visual information. The temporal lobe houses information and memory, as well as hearing. The auditory cortex is held in the temporal lobe, being responsible for hearing. The Wernicke's area is responsible for spoken language, as well as understanding the words or sentences being said or seen. Damage to the Wernicke's area would result in Wernicke's aphasia, or the inability to understand what is being said to them. On top of all of this, there is the motor cortex. The motor cortex controls our movement, with the right hemisphere controlling our left and the left hemisphere controlling our right. While most severed neurons cannot regenerate, brain plasticity may occur, reorganizing injured neural tissue. Split brains are both real and possible. When the corpus callosum is removed to stop epileptic seizures, the split brain occurs, in which the two hemispheres cannot interact with each other. Adoption studies have been performed, testing the nature versus nurture theory. It turns out that even though the children had been put under their adoptive homes, about 25 to 50% of their personality was inherited from their biological parents. As well as inheriting personality traits, a test in 1999 had shown that we get our extrovertedness or introvertedness from our genes, revealing our temperament and behavior. While nature does influence a lot of our personality, culture does as well. For instance, people in the American culture are more likely to grow up being more individualized than North Korea, a communistic country. Almost everything about us comes from our genes. Every cell inside of us has 46 chromosomes, or 23 pairs, except for your sex cells, which only have 23. Once the sperm and egg unite in the reproduction process, the egg will then have 46 chromosomes. Our traits all come from our genes as well. Whether it's the physical or psychological, simple monogenic, or complex polygenic, each and every person is unique thanks to our genotype. Consciousness is our awareness of the world around us. Of course, we know that sleep is essential in an altered state of consciousness. But did you know that there are different stages and cycles of the activity that we spend a third of our life doing? The sleep-wake cycle, also known as the circadian rhythm, runs throughout our whole life. In the sleep cycle, there is the state of awakeness, stages 1, 2, 3, and 4, and REM sleep. REM sleep is also known as rapid eye movement, in which REM sleep is when the most visual dreams occur. Stage 1 performs using theta waves on an EEG. This relaxing feeling, even though really scary sometimes because you can feel like you're falling or floating, is what brings us into the next stage of sleep. Stage 2 of sleep is when sleep spindles occur on top of the theta waves. This means you are actually asleep. Stages 3 and 4 of the sleep cycle are when your body goes into a deeper sleep or slow wave sleep. It performs delta waves on the EEG. And with all pros, there must be cons. Sleep deprivation, narcolepsy, sleepwalking, and sleep talking are just some of the many disorders one may get. Module 2 also talks about psychoactive drugs. There are 4 categories of the drugs: narcotics, depressants, hallucinogens, and stimulants. Narcotics are opiates, in which suppress pain. They are agonists that increase in an individual's body's natural painkillers. While this might sound like a plus, narcotics, as well as any other psychoactive drug, or even drugs in general, have a chance of killing the person taking the drug. Depressants, as the name, will quote-unquote make one feel happier, when in reality all it is doing is calming the neural activity. In fact, depressants are so harmful that they can slow our heart rates down to the point of lethal measures. Hallucinogens, as they sound, create a distorted reality, for example, hearing voices or seeing things that are not actually there. Some examples of these drugs include LSD and marijuana. Stimulants, unlike depressants, excite the neural activity, making the body more hyper. For instance, some medications used to treat ADHD, such as Adderall or methylphenidate, help speed up the sympathetic nervous system so one may be able to function. Unfortunately, many people overuse amphetamines, resulting in many deaths, which is why many forms of it are illegal in the U.S. Thank you so much for watching my AP exam review for Module 2 in AP Psychology. Have a great day! Bye!